Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started with today's Zoom opportunity. Uh, the next exam is on Wednesday, as they all are on Wednesdays, beginning at approximately 6 a.m., sometime during the morning, usually that early, sometimes later, and continuing until midnight. About 90% of the class takes the exam mid-afternoon to midnight, so there aren't too many of you early birds, but I like to put it out there in the morning just in case. Okay, also, other housekeeping note is there is a bonus quiz that is now posted in your exam or quizzes section of the Canvas. It relates to the birthday party lawsuit, so be sure and go in and take that after you have read, not read, but watched the video and taken notes on the video on on the birthday party lawsuit. Pay particular attention to detail. Think hard about why something occurred, why somebody may have been liable, not just that they were liable and A occurred and then B occurred, therefore A caused B. That's not the case in this situation. Be really careful that you know exactly why somebody may have been held liable. Okay, continuing on. This is part one of real estate, and part two will be the following week. So be sure and uh, do not forget anything in real estate part one because it rolls over into real estate part two. You may have questions on real estate part two next week that are contained in the material for real estate part one. There just really wasn't any better way to do it. There's way too much material for 1 week, so I had to divide it into 2 weeks. However, uh, that does mean that you may be responsible for knowing things you learn in week one for week two. Think of it as a good test, a good opportunity for you to warm up for the final exam where you'll have 3 or 4 weeks worth of material for the final exam. Okay, for real estate, you need to know what is real estate, what is real property, what bundle of rights does it include. This is not what lay people normally think. You have to understand exactly what those bundle of rights are, what they mean, and what things they include in order to appreciate real estate and real property law. Uh, Things like fixtures. What are the rules for fixtures in residential property? What about for commercial property? Do they differ, and why would they differ? What are the different interests in property? Fee simple absolute, leasehold interest, life estate. You need to know that kind of thing backward and forwards. For example, what kind of rights does someone who has a life estate interest have in property? Can they sell it, mortgage it? What can they do in order to, uh, because of their interest that they have? And that applies to anybody: leasehold interest, fee simple absolute, whatever. What's the difference between the different types of joint tenancies? We're going to mainly talk about two different types: a joint tenancy in common and a joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Which one of those allows you to leave property, for example, as a devise in a will? Which one of those means that you or your estate actually owns the property at your death? Which one means that you no longer have any interest and your estate has no interest when you die automatically? Which one would allow you to leave the property as a devise in a last will and testament? When would it be effective? When would it be ineffective? When would you have a situation where you might have a will and you leave your property in it to someone else? And it doesn't matter what the will says because it's a particular type of joint tenancy. All of those kind of things you need to know for purposes of the exam. What's the difference between a profit interest, an easement, and a license. Which one has the right and ability to be revoked at will? Which one or ones do not? What about the statute of frauds? Statute, not statue, statute of frauds. When does it apply? What does it apply to? When would it be necessary in order to enforce a contract? And when could you enforce a contract with other evidence instead? I know we haven't had the contract section yet in the course, but we're going to learn that you can have written contracts and you can have verbal or oral contracts. A handshake deal is a deal. It's a contract that generally is enforceable in some situations. But the statute of frauds is an exception to that verbal contract rule, and you need to know when it applies in the context of this section on real estate and real property law. What does a community property state mean? What does it actually mean? Is Alabama a community property state? Now, I'm going to warn you here that community property, in the sense that you walked into the class thinking like all lay people do, you probably were thinking, gee, I know X, Y, and Z got a divorce, X and Z got a divorce, or maybe you got a divorce, and the judge talked about community property, and my lawyer talked about community property. Not the same thing. Not the same thing in real estate law. Excuse me. Instead, it's something entirely different. And what you need to know for purposes of this class and this exam for this week is what community property is in the context of real estate law. Not a divorce term. Not interested. That's a different area of the law. You will get this wrong if you do not study it. Lay people will get it wrong every time. Hopefully, you're going to be better than lay people. Excuse me. Okay. Those are the handy dandy tips that I have for this week's exam on Wednesday. Do you have any questions for me?
I do not.
No questions?
Nope. That one.
Very good. Well, thank you for being with me today. Excuse me while I'm eating lunch while I do this. Um, Good luck on the exam for Wednesday, and we'll conclude this and see you next time. Thanks.